Good morning. We're going to start in about 2 or 3 minutes. If you can find your seats, thank you. Good morning. What a great, busy crowd. Boy, I love to see that. Welcome to Power Breakfast 2021. My name is Greg Four. I'm a partner in G&G Media, the publishers of RV Business and Woodall's Campground magazines. We're thankful to be back together after 18 months since the last Power Breakfast, and to once again share time and information with members of the industry and the greater Elkhart community. Our goal, as it always has been, is to provide up-to-date, concise, and pertinent information that may help all of us as we work on product and business strategies in this very fluid environment. Because the list is lengthy, I will dispense with introductions of our guests. Suffice it to say that we are honored today by the presence of a great many local, state, and federal elected officials, members of their staffs, as well as many other friends of the industry. I encourage you to meet and chat with these guests who support our industry, either during the break or after the event. Once again, the Planning Committee is pleased to welcome and thank our sponsors for supporting the Power Breakfast. The sponsors are Airxcel, Cummins, Dometic, Forest River, KOA, RVIA, Spartan RV Chassis, Thor Industries, Wells Fargo Wholesale Finance, and Winnebago. As we gather today, we continue to deal with the impact of COVID, both past and current events, and likely be with us tomorrow as well. And while the COVID bounce in retail sales may have subsided at this point in time, registrations remain strong by historical standards, and as an industry, we continue to work towards balance in inventory, product, parts availability, pricing, and many more issues on a daily basis. And as an industry, we work together through our national organizations where we can on those things we cannot accomplish effectively on our own. It's one of the things that makes us unique. It makes us smarter and stronger and creates an atmosphere where we can be more agile. Our national and state organizations do provide horsepower when needed and a plethora of member services. Our program this morning is aimed at both what we can accomplish together and what we can accomplish individually. Our first session this morning will include comments from Indiana's Speaker of the House, Todd Huston, as well as a video report from Congresswoman Jackie Walorski. Following, RVIA staff will provide an update on a number of initiatives, and then, as we did 18 months ago, we'll hear from renowned economist Peter Morici with us as a guest of Wells Fargo. Returning from the break, RVDA will take the stage off of their just completed ConExpo in Las Vegas, and then we'll hear from KOA about the most recent data they have to share about consumers, the important end users of our products. And to finish the event, we have three well-known industry personalities, the leaders of the industry's three largest RV companies, together in a panel led by Sherm Goldenberg of RV Business Magazine and Bob Parrish from Wells Fargo. Also, please take note that 10 to 15 minutes following the conclusion of our morning program, Peter Morici will host More from Morici right here where I'm standing. If you want to plan to stay and extend your stay, he will answer more questions and delve in a little deeper in the things he talks about. Should be quite interesting. While our crystal ball may not be as clear as it is at times, today our presenters can hopefully provide some guidance as to what's ahead and how it may impact how we act tomorrow. Again, we appreciate everybody being here this morning. Before I introduce our first speaker, I want to make a call out to IMHA RVIC, our Indiana Association for Manufactured Housing and RVs. Ron Breimeyer, Ron, where are you? Would you stand, please? He's the executive director and is with us this morning. Ron and his staff and his board have led RVIC initiatives working together with legislators and state agencies to provide state and local environments for us to do business. And they were instrumental in getting Indiana's Speaker of the House to be with us this morning. Ron, thank you. Our first speaker this morning hails from Fishers, Indiana. He was first elected to the House of Representatives in 2012 and more recently was chosen as Speaker of the House by his peers. He's a graduate of Indiana University and has spent a considerable amount of time as Speaker with the people at IMHA RVIC and has often visited Northern Indiana to learn more about our business and our needs. Please welcome Indiana's Speaker of the House, Todd Huston.
Thank you, Greg. It is great to be here at the Power Breakfast. I've heard so much about this event from my colleagues from Northern Indiana, and it meets all of my expectations. It's just so awesome to see this crowd, a record crowd, in a year of record production and a year of record sales. And that is a tremendous thing for this community, for the county, and for our state. And I first of all say, from all of us at the state level, thank you for all that you do for the state of Indiana. We are working actively, my colleagues and I, to continue to partner with you to make sure that Indiana is a tremendous place to continue to do business. We want you to grow and succeed every day. We're making investments throughout the state to try and make sure that Indiana stays in its rightful place as the RV capital of the world. You know, one of the things that we're challenged by every day, and is talking to folks, it's the same issues in every industry, but in particular in this industry, the supply chain and workforce. And we're working really hard on the workforce thing. We're proud of what we have in Indiana. We're proud that we're the fastest growing state of any state that touches us. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the Midwest. We have the highest participation rate in the Midwest. But we need more people. And that's what, as state elected officials, we're working hard to do. We need to make Indiana a place that attracts more people, to provide you with the workforce that you need. And we're making investments. We're making investments in $500 million in the READY program, in which Elkhart County and the counties surrounding you have all applied to provide the quality of life and the initiatives that will attract people to here. They'll keep our brightest and youngest here. We're making investments in career and technical ed to make sure that kids, all kids, have pathways into these types of industries. So we just want to continue to support the tremendous work that you're doing. We recognize it's never done at the government level. It's done in businesses. It's done by the private sector. And we look forward to continuing to partner with you to make sure that you continue to grow, you continue to succeed, and you continue to have such a tremendous impact on the state of Indiana. It's been my privilege, and it is my privilege to be here this morning. I wish you nothing but the best. Enjoy your breakfast.
Thank you, Todd, and thanks for taking your valuable time to travel to Northern Indiana. And we hope it's been as valuable for you as it has been for us to have you here. Jackie Walorski, U.S. Congresswoman representing the 2nd District of Indiana, would like nothing better than to be with us in person. However, Congress is currently in session, and as you all know, Jackie takes that responsibility very personally. She was born and raised in Northern Indiana and currently resides with her husband, Dean, in Jimtown. She has been a member of Congress since being first elected in 2012. She currently serves on the Ways and Means Committee, is the ranking member on the House Ethics Committee, and additionally, Jackie has been an active member of the RV Caucus. I doubt anyone works harder legislatively for the RV and related industries. Please welcome via video, Congresswoman Jackie Walorski.
Hi, I'm Jackie Walorski, and it is such a privilege to join you virtually today for the 9th annual RV Industry Power Breakfast to celebrate the RV industry and to look forward to a bright future ahead. I'm in Washington voting today, and I'm so sorry I can't be with you in person, but as you know, whether I'm at home in Indiana or at the Capitol, the RV industry is never far from my mind. I've had the great privilege of representing Indiana's 2nd District, including Elkhart County, the RV capital of the world. Thanks to our dedicated workforce and our amazing local manufacturers, we produce more than 80% of the world's RVs right here in the heartland. The RV industry powers our community and our local economy. It's an essential part of our local fabric. This has never been more apparent than in the last 2 years. Throughout the pandemic, the RV industry has been a shining example of perseverance and innovation. I've been amazed by the RV industry's dedication to creative solutions that keep their lines open and Hoosiers working despite all the obstacles thrown their way. As manufacturers across the country face frustrating supply chain bottlenecks and workforce challenges, our RV manufacturers are leading the way in problem solving. Your perseverance has motivated me to keep fighting for workers and manufacturers, and I'm continuing to push forward on solutions to eliminate barriers to your success. From securing better trade deal options to pushing back on burdensome rules and regulations, I've got your back in Congress. Thank you for your investment in the RV industry and in the highly skilled workforce. Your leadership is invaluable to Indiana and our vital manufacturing community. And as so many Americans discovered during the pandemic, RV life was the original social distancing and a treasured pastime. I've been encouraged by your industry's growth despite the challenges that you faced, and I'm confident that this success will continue into the future. Thanks again for your work, for joining together today to celebrate this remarkable industry. I look forward to seeing all of you soon in person.
We certainly thank Jackie for those kind words. Wish she could be here. Maybe in future planning we can do it when Congress is not in session and she can be here with us in person. Next up this morning is RVIA, bringing us up to date on a variety of fronts that they are focused on for 2022. Please welcome to the stage Craig Kirby, RVIA President, Karen Redford, RVIA Vice President of Brand Marketing and Communications, and Kurt Hemmeler, Executive Director of RVTI and Senior VP of Standards for RVIA.
Thanks, Greg. And thank you to the RV business team for allowing us to present today. How great is it to finally be back together in person for the Power Breakfast? I am so happy this is in person because of the multiple people on my normal Zoom call meetings who all tell me at the same time, Craig, you're on mute, you're on mute. Telling you. Well, a lot has certainly happened in the past 21 months to the point it was difficult for me to decide what I wanted to focus on this morning. We have accomplished so much together during this time, which I outlined recently at our annual meeting. COVID has fundamentally changed people, and many are reevaluating their lives and what is really important. Getting back to nature and spending time outdoors has become a priority. And everybody here knows that even prior to the pandemic, RVs are the ideal way to experience the outdoors. But the pandemic afforded us a massive opportunity to highlight the benefits of RVing and how it allows people the freedom and control to travel the country. RVing has experienced a never-before-seen level of interest, and our industry has risen to the challenge, meeting demand by producing record numbers of shipments. As I looked back on the past 2 years and how much we've accomplished, especially considering the industry was shut down for about 2 months, I quickly realized what I wanted to talk about this morning: industry unity. Now, I have to tell you that when I was much younger, if a speaker got up here and said they were going to talk about industry unity, I probably would have reached for my cell phone to see what the latest headlines were on ESPN. It's not that I didn't support industry unity, I did. But I really didn't comprehend the magnitude of its impact. Our unity was never more exemplified than at the very beginning of the pandemic, with the creation of the Industry Relaunch Task Force. Industry leaders from manufacturers, suppliers, aftermarket, finance firms, dealers, campgrounds, and U.S. and Canadian associations were instrumental in providing real-time data and information as to what was happening in each segment of the industry, which enabled us together to target specific industry obstacles, especially focusing on having the industry members declared essential businesses by the government. Working together, we were way more successful relaunching than other industries. The Industry Relaunch Task Force exhibited the best industry collaboration I've ever witnessed, and that is saying a lot considering how industry unity is responsible for some of our biggest successes. One great example continues to be GoRVing, a unifying force in an industry full of competitors. How unique is GoRVing? In the over 20 years that it's been in existence, no other industry has been able to launch a campaign of the same size, scope, and with comparable success. Another such areas are coordinated industry advocacy efforts, which played a critical role recently in the passage of the Great American Outdoors Act, the largest funding of federal and state parks in over 60 years. Another is the RV Technical Institute, manufacturers, suppliers, and dealers all recognizing that more needed to be done to recruit and train RV service technicians, led to a multi-million-dollar investment. And now we have a full-time staff at RVTI focused on this crucial area. And certainly, you cannot leave off self-regulation. You cannot put a price on the value of self-regulation. This has been accomplished because manufacturers and suppliers work together to develop standards that provide a safe experience for all RVers. Many of you are likely not aware that there was a time in the past where a majority of the states required RV manufacturers to submit RV model plans for approval before you could even sell a unit in that state. Needless to say, it was incredibly inefficient and costly. And through hard work and unity, we now have one set of national standards. And we are unique in how the industry constantly challenges itself in trying to improve our standards. In fact, the government even approached us for help on a standard. Not only did we attack that head on, we met the issues raised by government officials and instituted a standard much quicker than they could have accomplished. We maintain our self-regulation because of our unity as an industry. And our collective actions have earned the respect of government officials. Most recently, RVIA began working to strengthen the relationship with the campground industry. We formed a task force with RVIC, state campground associations, and campground operators to identify ways that together we can modernize and expand campgrounds and elevate the consumer campground experience. This is more critical than ever after our recent campground research study results. We found that there are 1.6 million RV campsites among federal, state, local, and private campgrounds. So 1.6 million campgrounds across the whole country. Contrast that with the fact that there are 11.2 million RV-owning households, and according to a recent demographic survey, 9.6 million people intend to buy an RV in the next 5 years. You don't need to be a mathematician to see that we need more RV campsites. Industry unity is not easy. It takes vision, understanding, compromise, and trust. It's all about relationships. So how do we maintain this unity to continue to conquer the challenges and take advantage of the opportunities? Especially when many of the people who initiated our signature programs are retired or are close to retirement. Enter the Emerging Leaders Coalition. This coalition was established last year, made up of representatives from manufacturers, suppliers, dealers, finance firms, aftermarket, and campground operators to ensure ongoing collaboration across the industry into the future. A significant long-term benefit is for our next generation of leaders to learn about all segments of the industry, to plan for and discuss the challenges of today and tomorrow, and to develop and extend personal relationships. And without a doubt, for me, it's these personal relationships that I treasure most. It's what really makes this industry so special and fun. So please be engaged with your association. I assure you that you will find it professionally and personally rewarding. We sit here this morning, all of us, extremely fortunate to be in an industry that is thriving during one of the most trying times in the world's history. Our success has come from us uniting and through your hard work and those across your companies. The commitment of the production teams certainly cannot be underemphasized. Suppliers are working every day to produce more product while navigating never-before-seen supply chain challenges to meet the needs of manufacturers and dealers. And because your focus has been on meeting those challenges, I don't know if you've taken the time to realize the tremendous impact you've had on so many people. The pandemic left people scared, stressed, and many were desperate for an escape, an opportunity to forget about the virus, if even for a little while. As those who build and sell RV products, you help provide that escape. You helped bring smiles and laughter back into people's lives. So the RVI team wants to thank you for all that you have done and continue to do to bring some normalcy to a very abnormal environment. Please take a few moments to appreciate all the good work the industry has done to drive our collective successes and the role that each of you play in delivering so much happiness to so many families. But don't just take our word for it. Here are a few happy RVers in their own words and own videos.
RVing has given us freedom, safety, and comfort during the pandemic.
Going RVing during COVID has been really a blessing for us.
RVing allows families to become closer, especially your inner circle of family, because those are the people that you see the most, especially during the time of COVID.
Right.
In 2020, our family sold our pop-up camper, and then we bought this brand new Class C motorhome, and it has allowed us to move about the country.
Well, I think it's been great because it's given me the opportunity to take my work out on the road and be out able to work 2 or 3 days a week and still be traveling all around the country, which has just been phenomenal.
It was nature and our family, and it was a really special time that may not have happened if it wasn't because of COVID.
Being out in nature has provided a lot of sanity and therapy for us.
So we'd like to thank the folks on the line at the RV manufacturing plants
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
for giving us the opportunity to tour the U.S. during COVID and see our family and friends in a very safe and healthy manner, and giving us a new perspective on life.
Thanks for going to work and keeping us rolling.
Your efforts do not go unnoticed, and we thank each and every one of you.
RVing, it's a culture.
It's a way of life, and I love it. We love it.
Thank you again, and now I'd like to turn the mic over to Karen Redfern, Go RVing's Chief Marketing Officer.
Thank you, Craig. Good morning, everybody. I bet most of you, like me, when we're 1 year back, were saying, come on, 2020, put you in the rearview mirror and let's go on to 2021. Unfortunately, it became almost 2.0. So we looked at that with Go RVing. What were our marketing efforts going to be for 2021? We knew that there were supply chain issues. We didn't want to continue driving immense numbers of consumers into the dealerships and not have that product available and create unsatisfied potential prospects because they couldn't get an RV. But also what we found when we did the research was in 2020, we had the highest percentage of new buyers were first-time buyers, first-time users in the industry. But not only were they the first-time buyers of RVs, in a lot of ways they were the first-time users of the outdoors. So we knew we had a lot of education. I think this is my clicker. We had to try to reach the consumers in a new way. So for 2021, we decided to pivot. And in that pivoting, we knew that we had a job to educate the consumers, how to use this new product that they had, where to use it, where to go with their families, how to get the most out of their experience so that we retain them for years down the road when some of their other vacation options start returning and they feel more comfortable. So we launched into working with our social media influencers and with our media partners who have influencers in their ranks who already have authenticated audiences that they can reach and tell our story for us. And so we produced a total of about 133 videos for the year on new content, how-tos, inspirational, educational, and push those out through our media buys and also through our website. So we've seen that we're talking to that diverse audience to continue growing and making contacts with our new consumers and that new emerging market. And yes, we even got into TikTok back in the summer, taking those same videos and putting them in 10 and 15 seconds bites has driven more people to the website to get more information. They want to know more about who Go RVing is and what they can do with their families. And what we've seen is we're driving those consumers to GoRVing.com in record numbers. They're staying on the sites longer. They're looking for that information. They're delving into what they can do and how they can be part of it, because we know that through our PR, we've got lots of stories out there in the media. And we've become that media darling in 2020. Everyone was talking about RVing. So we have a lot of consumers looking for that information, getting that initial before they step foot into an RV dealership to go into that purchase mode. We also know by those consumers coming into the website that we can drive in one click. Over 96,000 consumers have gone directly to the manufacturer sites. They've either seen somebody's RV, a friend they know has an RV, and they're already looking for a particular brand. And by coming through GoRVing.com, they can go directly to a manufacturer site and look for that information. I'm not going to go through, we've done a couple new surveys this year. You've probably seen them. And we push it out monthly now in a marketing minute from Go RVing, keeping the industry updated on what's going on, some of the new trends. Each month it has a consumer trend, because things like the craze in buy now, pay later, and the fractional ownerships, while we may look at it and say, well, no one's going to ever put an RV on layaway, there are elements of all these changes in consumerism that can affect how our industry will move forward. And what are those elements that we incorporate into our ways of doing business so we keep those consumers engaged instead of falling behind in what they think as a forward-thinking industry? So if you don't already receive that marketing report, contact the staff and we'll make sure that you get onto that mailing list so that you can see. But I just want to show you a really quick compilation of some of those videos that we did to inspire and educate our consumers and some of through our media partners, as well as working in the educational and how-to with our folks at the RVTI to tell some of those technical know-hows when they get out there. How do I hook up my wastewater system, and how do I get settled at the campsite? So this will just show you a few of those videos.
We bought this old crazy RV and it just changed everything. It just gives you this home away from home feel.
As a chef, it's hard to get away from the kitchen. I try to get out as much as I can. Coming to the mountains with my wife Alexis, it's a great way to just break away from the everyday hustle and bustle of the city life.
Having an RV allows us to do a lot of things that we wouldn't normally do.
To just get your family in an RV, head up the coast, that's just always been the dream of mine.
Life is full of ups and downs. Isabel was born with cerebral palsy. We never let her disability slow her down, and she puts a smile on every single day regardless.
Make this a family thing, but I think all black families would benefit from coming out here and just getting out again, getting out of the neighborhood.
It's so important, y'all, to spend time with your loved ones, family, and friends.
It's all about the experience. Catching fish is just a bonus.
So what is to come in 2021? We've got a lot to look forward to, and we're continuing. We launched in 2020 our campaign, Go on a Real Vacation. And we're going to be adding to our material and rebranding the program and getting new ads out there. A number of you participated last month. We had a great response from our manufacturers, and we went back and did our first major production shoot since COVID started. And we captured content of vehicles and people that we can use in our new campaign materials as we go forward. So for 2021, what we're looking at for our objectives is continuing to connect to people through our Go on a Real Vacation. And what we do, as you saw in those videos, we're connecting through that authenticity. We use the voices of the real RVers to help us to tell that story in a way that's relatable to our audiences who are seeing it. People that look like them, people that are doing the kinds of things they like to do, having experiences they would love to do. We're utilizing their experiences to help us. And we also know that in reaching some of those emerging markets, we have to look at why are those groups not part of the industry in a larger way. In 2022, sorry, I'm in the wrong year, going forward, we're going to be partnering with Black Folks Camp 2 to do an educational series with the RV dealers. There are generational and societal barriers to getting people of color into the outdoors. And we want them to have connections authentically through people who have been experiencing the RV lifestyle, but also teaching those people who are on the front line, talking to the consumers as they come into their dealerships. What are those kinds of things that need to be addressed to alleviate some of those fears and concerns and make them feel welcomed coming into the dealerships? So we'll see more of that coming in the next couple months. Our main focus is going to be on two areas: recruit, so we keep the industry growing and we future-proof and we continue to make our marketing, and retaining. We know that a sweet spot with the millennials is if they can use that vehicle 15 days, to them is a worthwhile purchase. You know, a lot of folks think that millennials don't have that money to spend, but they spend on things that they see that has value. Hence the reason that iPhones and all the others are so expensive and replaced continually. The technology and the experience, if the quality and the experience is there, they will pay the money for those experiences. So we're going to look at what do we do to capture them and make sure they're experiencing it optimally and feel like they're getting the value from that purchase and want to remain within the industry and moving forward. And then also, Go RVing is 25 years old. It needs a little facelift. So we're going to look at our brand persona. What does it mean to the consumer when they see that name of Go RVing? Is it as appealing? Do we need to tweak on things of who our persona is? And we'll be launching that in the early part of the year as we move forward with our new campaigns. So I invite you to take a look at all of our information and studies as they come out. And again, Go RVing, we are promoting what you are doing every day, so we appreciate and thank you for all of your participation and getting us the vehicles when we need them for productions and working with all of our projects that we have. And then next up, I'd like to introduce Kurt Hemler, who's the Executive Director of RVTI.
Good morning. And thank you, Karen, very much. Obviously, the team Karen has does a tremendous job, not just now, but for over 20 years. I can't think of anything that lasts 20 years, well, maybe some of my clothes, my son tells me. But anyways, you know, if you think about what Go RVing does, they get that lifestyle going, they get people into the industry. RVTI is there to keep them in the industry, right? We all know that if they have a great experience, that they will return, and we want to keep them doing the experience. And center button, Karen? Oops, there we go. So I have to tell a quick little story here. 2 years ago, as I came into the industry, RVTI's mission is to train, certify, and recruit folks into the industry, both current and existing workforce as well as new folks. And I remember when I was being interviewed, I was finding more out about this Go RVing thing. And I'm like, wow, there's my recruitment monster. In my back of my head, I got all this plan coming. And I remember as a new guy sitting down with James, and I'm telling him my plan, and he's all this. And he said, whoa, hold a second, young man, new guy. That's puppy dogs and unicorns. You don't go there. That's puppy dogs and unicorns. So as we see the combining of things, and as you see RVTI and Go RVing working more and more together, it is very exciting. So as we look here at where did we come from? Just a couple years ago, if you're a technician, a service technician in this industry, your learning experience was, let's just say, not very good. It consisted of a set of textbooks that hadn't been updated since 2012, and you might sit down and read those books and then just take a test. And so as I've looked at and researched what it was to create for the industry, we knew definitely it had to be more than just a set of textbooks. So I'd like to say I've got a little video here from a couple of our students, and I'll let them tell you really what it's like today versus what it was 2 years ago.
I've only been in the industry for about 2 years, but what interested me in it was it seemed like my whole life's work fit right in, so I was very excited that I could use electronics and carpentry and mechanics and do one job. This training is the standard. It's industry-wide. They have really made it to where everybody's on the same playing field, and the things I get taught, someone in Tucson, Arizona, those technicians are going to be doing it the same exact way I do it.
We got guys from all different disciplines here. We got guys that have never done a brake job in their life, and then guys like me who do them on a regular basis.
You really learn the basics, and if you don't know the basics, you can't build from there and grow.
Everybody learns in every direction in this environment. It's not just, teacher to student. It's student to student, student to teacher. It's pretty free exchange of information.
I would say the course was very comprehensive. It's very intense. It definitely requires dedication. You really have to kind of want it. I can see a person coming in, not knowing anything about RVs, and it starts at such a basic level from the level 1. You can learn everything and be just as good as someone who's been doing it for 3 or 4 years.
It's going to open more doors for me, especially having this certification. It gives me something to stand on. If you're somebody that really wants to get into things and see how things work and get enjoyment out of fixing things, it's a rewarding career.
So there you have it. That's straight from the students' mouths themselves, taking classes right over here on Middlebury at our location. We created a career path that had never existed before RVTI. A technician now has a complete path of level 1 through level 4 currently. This will obviously be a live and continuing a process of improvement as this career path could branch out into many different other areas as well. But currently there are 4 levels. The education is both hands-on and applicable, meaning that you actually have to perform, not just read. The current training options that are out there, we set this model up in a hub and spoke form. The hub, obviously, right here in Elkhart itself at our location over on Middlebury Street. And then we have our authorized learning partners. These are folks that are across the country that are able to do the training as though they were coming to Elkhart, because it's just not feasibly possible to think that everybody can come to Elkhart for training financially. So as far as direct training by RVTI, here are your options from the hub. Self-paced online classes, in-person classes, combination of in-person or online. Self-study, you can still do the old textbook style if you choose, or you can test out. These authorized learning partners, the spokes throughout the country, the idea here is that they are going to be able to provide the same experience as though everybody was, or the service tech was able to come to Elkhart directly and get this training. This is live training across the country. Dealerships, community colleges, high schools, all can be a learning partner. And this is just a list of a few of them. Currently, we have just a little over 30 to 40. And this will obviously be something that we continue to focus on. Over this past year, for 2021, even though, as we know, sales were very robust, there was actually a lot of training going on. We will finish 2021 with over 2,000 students trained or certified in this industry, either by the hub here in Elkhart itself or by our learning partners, with a lot of them doing it online. What's new for 2022? Thanks to the RVTI board, RVIA board, Go RVing board, and RVIA board, they all came up and approved a new price structure that allows RVTI to offer this curriculum at an extremely affordable price. A subscription is what we are calling it, and if you are a single dealership, for as little as $100 a month, you can train your entire staff. If you're an individual, it's only $300 a year. And this allows you complete access to all that career path and all the levels of training that I mentioned earlier. As far as a partnership versus a subscription, the big difference is a learning partner, and if you're going to become a learning partner, is that you want to actually teach the classes live at your facility, whatever your facility might be. There's an additional $2,500 cost to do that. If you want to leave all the training to RVTI and the hub, whether it be online or in person or what have you, then you would just do a rooftop subscription, which is the $1,200 a year. It's just a graph to show all the differences. Now 2022, train, certify, recruit. That is the third thing of our mission, right? We have all the tools we need. We have a building, we have curriculum, we have just hired Tracy Engelmeyer, just as of yesterday, who many of you know, to lead up the recruitment efforts. But we're going to be fully dedicated into 2022 for recruitment. In fact, we're looking to bring on over 1,000 new recruits into the industry, whether it be veterans, whether it be high schools, whether it be community colleges, whether it be all of the folks that are in the Great Resignation right now. A lot of folks are changing career fields, and we're a perfect candidate for that option. And so with that, I will step aside, but I want to thank everybody this morning for your time. And if you get 5 minutes, please come by the school over at 3333 Middlebury. Thank you.
We are, in fact, thank you, Kurt and Karen and Craig. You know, the RVTI comes to mind as a way for us as an industry to protect our self-regulation downstream. So it is an important facet of what we're doing as an industry. And we are fortunate to have a member-driven organization that's leading the way, as well as our volunteer board, directing the activities to the benefit of all of us. I would like to take a moment to recognize the RVIA chairman of the board, Jeff Rutherford, president and CEO of Airxcel. Jeff, would you stand? Thank you. Our last speaker before the break is one we heard from 18 months ago and always shares his definitive wisdom about the economy, the political landscape, and outside events that may impact our industry. Once again, sponsored by Wells Fargo, Peter Morici is an economist and emeritus professor of business at the Robert H. Smith School of Business at the University of Maryland and a national columnist. His views appear regularly in Market Watch, a publication published by Dow Jones, and the Washington Times and other major newspapers throughout the United States and Canada, and on the website of Fox and others. He participates in forecasting surveys at Reuters, Dow Jones, and several other services, and his views are featured several times each week on the BBC, Fox, and other major networks. Please welcome back Peter Morici.
Well, thank you very much. It's really flattering to be at two conferences in a row. It's not often that speakers for a group like this have that honor, and I thank you very much. And a special thanks to the folks at Wells Fargo for enabling this trip. I am an economist, and I always have two purposes. One is to inform and so forth and bring you up to date on some of the things going on in Washington and the country. And the other is to try to convince you that it's not like a visit to an accountant's office. You know, we get our young economics students from the accounting department. They're the ones that don't quite have the personality to make it over there. If you would care to learn more about what I have to think and say about the economy, I publish 2 columns weekly, and the email address there does work. And if you send me an email that says mailing list in the subject line, you will receive those columns. Now, some lessons from history. The economy at one time grew a lot more rapidly than it does now. And we fundamentally have to ask why. During the Reagan-Clinton years, this is bipartisan, we grew at nearly 3.5% a year. What makes those times different? And as opposed to the Bush-Obama years, which was below 2%. Both presidents during their periods of recovery, non-crisis years, had identical records, which says something about whether you can grow the economy on a liberal track or a conservative track. There are things that are more fundamental than even the government in place. Now, during the Trump years, prior to the pandemic, he accomplished 2.5% growth, which was rather remarkable for this century. And whatever is said about his years, his economics team was very stable. There was no change at Treasury. There was hardly any change at the Economic Council. All the drama was on the political side. Larry Kudlow managed to hold everybody together. I'd go visit over there. Lighthizer would scream at me. And I think I served a purpose in that it was somebody they could blame for the negative press they got, because I guess I was part of that negative press. But in any case, it was a very good period with very, very good economic leadership. Whatever you might think of the man and his personality and so forth and his record in other regards, they did perform. So the question is, how do we get there again? How do we get there post-pandemic? Now, there we go. The 2 things that contribute most to economic growth are productivity and labor force growth. You can't grow unless you learn how to do things better, and you can't grow unless you have more people to do things better. And right now, getting an adequate labor force is a considerable challenge. Improving productivity shouldn't be with all the technology that we have. The remedies, basically we have lousy labor force growth right now. We're reaping the harvest of a low birth rate that's been going on for a long time, and it's getting worse. We haven't had a very cogent or productive immigration policy. We have not been strategic like other countries about who we permit to immigrate. And we have a lot of people sitting down. Now, we not only have a great resignation, but not everybody's moving to like the RV industry or into technology areas. We read stories of people doing things like that used to make sandwiches in New York and now are coding. You know, you can learn. You don't need to go to college to learn to code. You need to go to school for about 18 weeks. You don't need to go to community college to become an RV mechanic, but it might be easier if your industry had a Labor Department approved apprenticeship program that paid people $15 an hour like other industries do. These things would be helpful. But a lot of people are also just sitting down. And the question is why? And I think if we look at some of the things that have happened thanks to COVID, the hybrid workforce, so many people are not showing up in the cities to work. My son is a Manhattan lawyer. He is required to go to the office 2 days a week. This is his 5th year out, so he has to follow rules still. And so he goes to the office 2 days a week, which means he only buys sandwiches 2 days a week. Those people that used to make the sandwiches and all those closed sandwich shops, I was there in September to see what's going on, are someplace. Now, some of them have gone out into the country to find new things to do, but many of them are collecting the child tax credit and so forth, because they may have a couple of kids, and they don't have mobility and so forth. So they're sitting in apartments in Queens saying that they don't want to return to work because of COVID. It's very easy to say, I don't want to return to work because of COVID, if the government is sending you a check in the mail, paying your rent, and providing you with free health care. Decisions might be different if we had different policies. In any case, the abandonment of the cities is giving us a displaced workforce. And the question is, how do we incentivize more of them to find new things to do with their lives, often which would be more productive and pay them much better? That is the principal challenge that we face. There are other revolutions taking place. I think that the pharmaceutical industry is forever changed by what happened with the vaccine and the techniques that we learned for coming up with a solution very quickly. Higher education has probably seen its last days of its old model. It's too expensive, doesn't work very well, and guess what? While your sales are booming, its sales are declining. Universities can't find freshmen. No surprise. You can go into debt for $200,000 at Harvard University, learn to dislike your parents, distrust any stories about George Washington, call Thomas Jefferson a racist, run outside and find out the only place you can get a job is on the staff of AOC, but she only has about 12 staffers. Malpractice lawyers, they really do the same thing over and over again. They keep trying to hunt for a doctor or a dentist that puts in a crown wrong. What they really ought to be doing is painting a bullseye on the back of every American university president. That's where the malpractice is. It really is. If you go to an American university and you want to major in art history, we have a major at the University of Maryland in film studies. Film studies. So instead of having to read the books, you watch old Steinbeck movies on the flick. Think about it. So you watch The Grapes of Wrath instead of reading it. What do you do with a degree in film studies? I'm not talking about the NYU program where they teach you how to make media. I'm talking about film studies the way you take art history. We can't have people doing that. So probably that industry is going to change, and that's probably going to be a good thing. The real question is, does it change fast enough? Now, the Biden agenda, I'll let you make your own judgments about it. Some of it is really quite good, and some of it does not contribute positively to this, just like the last guy had an agenda. Some of it contributed positively, and some of it, not so good. The important thing here is to discern what is going to be helpful and to try to put pressure on to keep things from happening that aren't going to be helpful. The $19 trillion March stimulus package is the reason that prices are up 7% year over year. Over the last 21 months, the federal government has spent about $5 or $6 trillion in stimulus money. Most of that was borrowed, but it wasn't really borrowed. It was this rather neat kabuki dance done on computers where the Treasury would sell the bonds and the Federal Reserve would buy the bonds. And thanks to modern technology, they don't even have to print money to do that. They just use a computer keyboard to deposit dollars in the checking accounts of the people that bought the bonds and then sold them back to the Fed. As a consequence, the Federal Reserve balance sheet is up about $4.2, $4.3 trillion. At this time, in the bank accounts of households and businesses is about $3 trillion in unspent stimulus money that was not there in February 2020. The checking account balances are in the high 4 trillions when beforehand they were in the high 1 trillions. That money is yet to be spent. So there isn't much the Federal Reserve can do right now other than take some very draconian actions, which it won't do, to keep this inflation from happening. The The infrastructure package is really, it advertised at $1.2 trillion, is less than $600 billion. The first $600 billion is old money that's been moved around. This other $600 billion that's supposed to be new, about half of that is for useful purposes. Things like replacing the tunnel under the Hudson River so that Amtrak runs effectively from Washington to Boston. Upgrading airports, providing internet in rural areas, things of that nature. These are very important things to do. But overlaying most every program this administration managed to put into that bill are race and gender goals. Mr. Buttigieg, a son of South Bend, has his own private fund. You will be able to go to Mr. Buttigieg with worthwhile infrastructure projects, and he will decide who is worthwhile to undertake worthwhile infrastructure projects. I leave it to your imagination, the criteria that will be applied in deciding who is worthwhile. That is really, I've seen models like this before. Before NAFTA, this is the way Mexico worked. Before NAFTA, this is the way Brazil worked. Before NAFTA, this is the way Romania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, East Germany, Poland, and the Baltic states worked. They built roads, they built apartment buildings, they built subways, they built highways. They decided to have a society that was much less based on the automobile, but they did it at tremendous cost. You're businessmen and women, and I think you can relate to this. It is all well and good to say we want electric vehicles, but it is not well and good to say we're not going to produce oil and gas and gasoline until we have those electric vehicles. Because all you accomplish then is very expensive gasoline, and you make it, the Speaker of the House can pay for his gasoline. The professor here can pay for his gasoline. But where I grew up on Elmont, Long Island, near the Belmont Racetrack, the people who succeeded us, the people who work at the Safeway, the assistant produce manager, the checkout clerk, my mother's successor, my mother was the lady in the school lunchroom that took you 35 cents for those people can't afford that gas. I remember the 1970s and the hardships that imposed on my parents. One of the times in my childhood, I guess I grew up on this occasion. During the energy crisis, I came home from graduate school and the house was very comfortable. It was all 71 degrees and the house was very nice. And then I discovered that when I was away from home, the house was at 60 degrees because they couldn't afford to heat it. They used heating oil. And I felt so ashamed that they did that for me. That is going to happen this winter in places like northern Michigan and Maine. It's going to be eat or heat. It's ridiculous not to pump gasoline. But to give you an idea how distorted things were, 10 years ago, the required rate of return on a new oil and gas project was 8 to 10%. On a new solar energy project, it was 8 to 10%. It's an efficient capital market. For a reasonably good likelihood of success, it cost you 8 to 10% to get the cash you needed from the capital market to develop, a new field or to put up some windmills or what have you. Now, the required rate of return in the oil and gas industry is 20%. And in the solar energy business, it's 5%. So what we're getting is a lot of bad solar projects that probably won't hold up as technology changes and they'll become stranded assets, and a shortage of gasoline. Prices are going up. Where's the money going? You notice I'm not hanging on my slides very tightly, and the reason is things are changing so rapidly. Where is the money going? I will tell you one thing. The Secretary of Energy does not know. Last week, while I was on Fox, she preceded me. They showed a clip, and they asked me to comment. They said, how many barrels of oil does the United States use each day? And she says, well, I don't have that figure with me. That is published in the Monthly Energy Review by the Department of Energy. And you know who signs off on that number? The Secretary of Energy. She doesn't know the information she signs off on. So in an environment like this, we get all these distorted decisions. These monies don't get spent very well. Unfortunately, Build Back Better contains a lot of this stuff. You watch, the funded child care won't deliver a lot of child care, but what it's going to do for you folks that employ people in your factories and pay them well, they will have trouble getting child care because what they will do is two things: bid up the price. Right now, child care is very informal. You know, if you want to be in the child care business, it's not that hard to get a license, and you hire people to work in your house. My kids went to a place like that in Alexandria, Virginia, which is San Francisco East. I mean, I almost get stoned when the limos show up to take me to Fox. Okay? But it's still very informal. You watch what happens as the certification industry gets going. And we start requiring all these people to change diapers, to take 6-week courses in diaper changing. Something that human beings have been doing for their infants ever since we had diapers, which goes back before the Romans, will now require special training. How to hold a bottle at the proper angle will become a special course, and so forth. You watch what this does. But the bottom line is, we are probably going to create another $5 to $6 trillion in spending over the next 10 years on the back of about $2 trillion of new revenue. I was, again, on the Charles Payne Show last Thursday or Friday, and Janet Yellen said that this thing is fully paid for. And the CBO says, just if we believe your assumptions, there's $400 billion short. And they asked me, what do you think? And I said, I thought Pinocchio was a boy. I don't know how you can have a PhD in economics, which she has. And oh, by the way, the Nobel laureates that signed that letter that said, it's great stuff. Her husband was one of the signatories. She's married to a Nobel laureate. That was something that NBC didn't bring out. In any case, a lot of this stuff will be too expensive to finance, and it'll be very inflationary, because either the Fed will have to print a lot of money or permit interest rates to go up, and that will probably give us a Paul Volcker type of recession to stop the inflation. We're basically faced with a lot of stimulus, which will give us growth and inflation, or a recession to squeeze it all out. If Powell would have let the interest rates go up and do that, it would mean that Biden would be a one-term president like Jimmy Carter was. And the thing we really don't know, the black box which makes forecasting impossible, so what I'm about to give you is a polemic, my forecast, is that we really don't know how Powell will now react when he doesn't have to run for office. He doesn't have to worry about being reappointed. This should prove to be a very interesting exercise. Okay, can I have me back? Thank you. Here's my forecast, such as it is. We will probably see significant growth in 2022. I mean, this is baked in the cake. We had slow growth in Q3 because of Delta. Q4 is pretty strong. And assuming that the Omicron strain is contagious but benign, and that is a lot of people catch it, but they don't get very sick, which is the best information we have now. All the panicking in the market is just that. It's panicking. It's silly stuff. Then this is what the world should look like. In 2022, we'll still continue to grow because we'll have a lot of stimulus, but we're not going to have the kind of inflation the Fed is forecasting, the European Central Bank is forecasting, and so forth. They're saying that inflation will go down to about 2.5% and then eventually get down to 2% a year. With this level of stimulus and spending, that is not possible. The only way it is possible is if that growth number in 2022, towards the end of the year, the second half in 2023 starts to go negative. That's the only way that's possible. Because think about it. You just have too much money chasing too few goods. It's basic economics. We teach it in principles of economics. And you know, I guess Mr. Powell doesn't remember that stuff. And Janet Yellen should know better. I mean, we have an excuse for Jay Powell. He's an attorney. Yeah, on Sirius, they asked me when he was appointed, what do you think? I says, a lawyer to be chairman of the Fed? I want to be the next Supreme Court justice. You know, why not? You know, he says, well, could you think of somebody better than Jay Powell? And I thought, oh, Tony La Russa, you know. I said, how about Tony La Russa or the Pope? We have a retired Pope. We could use a Pope in that job. After all, it's a Pope-type job, and you know, he at least would know how not to get in trouble with the press, because every new Fed chairman has a weaning period where for about 6 months he goes and gives his testimony, he does his press conference, he steps on his tongue, and the market panics. I mean, that happens with every one of them. I don't know how I would manage with that job, to be honest. In any case, this environment actually, if we have what I think we will have, and that is a period of 3 to 4% inflation, a period of reasonable growth, and a continuing wrestling with COVID. I mean, there's a lot more letters left in the Greek alphabet. And it's going to happen. Simply because of the kind of environment we have in South Africa and Latin America. We're going to get more strains. It means that we are probably not in a COVID period, but a COVID era that will not end abruptly, but it will tail off over time. And during this period, things like RVing will lock into the behavior of another generation. The busiest place in Alexandria, Virginia is the Spokes Bicycle Shop. Bicycles are going out of that place like you wouldn't believe. I'm a cyclist, and I've never seen it. We're becoming like Amsterdam, and that is starting to lock into people's behavior. Bicycling is a lifestyle like RVing. You ask my wife, the whole world is built around Peter's cycling schedule. I biked at the age of 72, I biked 8,500 miles last year. That is, I have a 77-year-old friend, a lady, a physicist, PhD physicist. She does 12K a year. I mean, it's just, that's it. Once you get into that kind of mode, whether it's RVing, whether it's rock climbing, what have you, fishing is coming back. I was out fishing with my friends on the New River, a wonderful flatboat experience on the water for a couple of days, 8 hours at a time. Once you get into that, it becomes the way you live. And for example, going to Europe every summer goes away because that's what you do. So in some ways, you have a remarkable opportunity. I don't know that you can grow as rapidly as you have in recent years, but you certainly, even if you can get the materials and the workers and so forth, there are very positive things you can do. Your training programs are one. Fewer people are going to go to college. I would say you need to transition those training programs into an apprenticeship program that is formalized, factory-based, and pays. The department, to give you an idea what you're up against or what your competition is, your typical Department of Labor apprenticeship program pays $15 an hour, lasts 1 to 2 years, and 90% of the students that finish, a little slanted, we're taking 10% out, gets an average pay to start of over the high 50s, which is higher than the average college graduate. What's more, the bell is very narrow. So you do it, you get it. In college, you do it, you get hired by Goldman Sachs and you really get it, or you're part of everybody else and you have your debt. These kids graduate with no debt, and it's a short time horizon. And I also can tell you, having been an educator for the last 50 years, I went into the classroom for the first time the day after Labor Day in 1970. About half of the kids that we had then and that we have now, and they will have 50 years from now when I'm just finishing my career. Yes, people say, when are you going to retire? I says, it's hard to see retirement when you're only at mid-career. We've always had the problem that about half of the kids that we get as freshmen really shouldn't be there. Not that we shouldn't let them in, but they need to come to find out that that's not the place for them to be. They may have the ability, but not the inclination. Not everybody wants to sit around and ask questions about why Socrates was different than Plato. But the reality is, while you may think that's useless, well, I can't use that word, useless stuff, is the very kind of thinking you use to solve complex issues and why you are managers and producers as opposed to production workers. But not everybody is cut out to do that kind of thing. They want more direct satisfaction, and they want to work with their hands and so forth. You have the opportunity, you can give people what is so scarce today, the opportunity to be a craftsman. But I would say you need to re-up your game a bit, as you have been doing, but to take it to the next level, where you really have a formalized apprenticeship program, which then spreads people out into the factories and the suppliers and so forth, and into the maintenance areas and what have you. I think if you do that, your industry will profit much better, and you're going into a period you can now start to think long-term about succeeding. This is no longer a quick opportunity. This is now a long-term opportunity. And I think the RV industry should see it in those terms. Thank you. You must have questions. Greg, you always have a stock of questions, Wisley. Greg.
Yeah, who's gonna? Oh. Yeah, I have a question. Who's the next Notre Dame coach?
I don't have that data in front of me.
Okay, all right.
Then
Well,
again, I'm not running for
I thought you
secretary.
signed off on that kind of stuff, so I just was.
Yeah, I know.
Oh no, that was Janet that did that.
Yeah, Janet
right?
does that.
Peter will be back here at the end of today's 10 or 15 minutes after we finish to answer questions and to share some of what you saw him flip through quickly that he didn't get to cover. I had dinner with Peter yesterday or last night. I spent the afternoon with Peter yesterday. I assure you, you didn't hear everything he has to say. Okay? Anyway, thank you, Peter, as always. Another round of applause. We're going to go for a 10 or 15 minute break. Can we start finding our seats, please, for the second half? Thank you. What's that? What's that? Can we please find our seats for the start of the second half? Thank you. We're going to get underway. While as important as the social time is, it also is important that we end at a reasonable time. That's always one of our goals, to make sure that we meet your expectations on that. Moving into the second half of our program, I'm pleased to introduce RVDA to you. Phil Ingrassia, RVDA President, and a familiar face and industry voice, will be joined on stage by newly appointed RVDA Chairman Mike Pirro of Hilltop Camper and RV in Fridley, Minnesota. Please welcome to the stage Phil and Mike.
Well, good morning. I'm Mike Pirro of Hilltop Camper and RV, a family-owned dealership in the state of Minnesota with 4 locations. Our dealership was founded by my grandfather back in 1951, and this year we're celebrating our 70th year in business. Thank you. We appreciate the invitation from RV Business to be a part of the Power Breakfast and everything all of you in this room do to support the RV retailers across the United States and Canada. Last month I was elected RVDA Chairman of the Board, and I can assure you that the RVD Board shares a deep commitment to the industry and our mutual customers. And I wanted to just share a little bit of information about RV dealers. There are just over 2,700 RV dealers or RV dealer rooftops across the United States. These dealers generate $26 billion in annual sales, which is up more than 80% over the last 10 years. RV dealers employ 49,000 people with an annual payroll of $2.5 billion. So like our manufacturing and supplier partners here today, RV dealers are expanding at a rapid rate and investing millions of dollars in new facilities, new retail IT systems, and in new employees to support our growing industry. RVDA is pleased to be working with our industry partners to improve our ability to service customers after the sale through measuring and enhancing our industry's repair event cycle time. With the help of RVDA's RV Learning Center, we're working to educate our service writers, service managers, and parts managers through training and certification programs that help dealership fixed operation departments run efficiently. RVDA also supports the RV Technical Institute here in Elkhart as we work to develop the next generation of RV service technicians. RVDA, along with RVIA, is also a leader in the Outdoor Recreational Roundtable to make sure our customers have access to better camping opportunities on federal and state lands. The last 2 years have been an incredible period for RV shipments and sales. At the RVDA Convention Expo last month, there was a lot of focus on keeping the industry's momentum going. We need to build on the unprecedented number of first-time buyers that have joined the ranks of RV owners, as well as reach out to new customers who have yet to experience camping and travel in an RV. Now I'd like to turn the podium over to RVDA President Phil Ingrassia for a special presentation.
Thanks, Mike, and good morning, everyone. The history of the RV industry is filled with people whose innovation and leadership have fueled our growth. And many of those are honored here at the RVMH Hall of Fame. In the mid-1990s, the RVDA Board of Directors established the Titan Award to recognize the pioneering efforts of individuals whose vision made RV travel a preferred leisure activity for millions of Americans. Past recipients of this award include legends in RV manufacturing, John Crean, John K. Hansen, Tom Corson, Lloyd Bontrager and Bertha Bontrager Rhodes, and Bob Tiffin. Today, we are pleased to announce another Titan Award recipient who has done so much to make RV travel accessible, affordable, and fun for everyone. An imaginative entrepreneur and active cheerleader for the RV industry, he is recognized for building his company into the industry's largest privately owned manufacturer and selling it to Warren Buffett, bringing the prestige of Berkshire Hathaway to the RV industry. RVDA's Titan Award recipient is Forest River's Pete Legal. And I'll send it over to Mike and Pete for a few words.
On behalf of RVDA and all RV dealers across the country, I want to thank you for everything you've done for us dealers and the industry as a whole. And we want to present this to you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Phil. And thanks to RVDA who voted me this tremendous award. There's not very many out there. And it's one hell of a prize, you know. And it's due to the people who work for Forest River that got me this, who make Forest River what Forest River is. And I want to say thank you. And like I say, thank you to all the members on the board of directors at RVDA that voted to give me this. And I want to thank a lot of people who made it possible. It's a beautiful award, particularly when I'm now and maybe in the same class, at least for a while, with some of these other notable people, whether it be Hansen, Crean, Bontragers, Corson. Anyway, can't have a better group than those people. I just want to say thank you and really appreciate it.
Congratulations, Pete, and thank you, Mike and Phil, for being with us today for RVDA's update and to present the Titan Award. It's a very, very nice thing to have happen here. KOA has long been known for completing outstanding consumer surveys and sharing the vital information with industry partners. And they have been a Power Breakfast sponsor since day one. Today, we are fortunate to welcome Darren Usselman, Chief Operations Officer for KOA. Darren began his career with KOA in 2017, following 6 years in financial services operations with GE Capital and 6 years as a PGA golf professional with Toll Brothers Home Builders. He lives in Billings, Montana with his wife Candy and their 10-year-old twins, Trey and Maddie. Please welcome to the podium, Darren Usselman.
Woo. Well, good morning, everybody. How we doing? Awesome. It's great to be here at the RV Power Breakfast. I can't thank you guys enough for letting us be here and let KOA have a spot on the stage today. It means a lot. You know, my background in golf, somebody said yesterday, are there going to be free lessons? Following the breakfast this morning, I thought we could move out all those tables in the back. We can do some air swings, and I can maybe shave a few strokes off the game next year. So anyways, in all seriousness, no, in golf, we always said it's all about warm welcomes and fond farewells. And I think that's one of the things I love about working at KOA the most. It really is kind of rooted in our background of really driving that service for that end user where all your rigs end up landing on our campgrounds. And that's what we try to do each and every day, is really provide that experience for our mutual customers. So as we kind of kick off today, you know, normally Toby is here, our president and CEO. She can't be. Her and her husband are getting ready to welcome another little one into the world, which is super exciting. And so we certainly wish her the best in that regard. She sends her regards, and she can't wait for another opportunity to get back here with this fine group. KOA is the world leader in defining and advancing the business and experience of outdoor hospitality. That's what we do. We have 525 campgrounds spread across North America. And if we can get the slides, there we go. And through that, really, our mission is connecting people to the outdoors and to each other. That's what we try to do each and every day. That's what every one of our locations really tries to do. But I would say that that mission is really the mission for everybody in this room. If we really think about the ecosystem that we have between our two industries, I think this mission can really help bridge that gap. Right? It's everything that happens on the assembly lines that ends up at the dealerships, that's purchased by the end user, and then ultimately that visits our campgrounds. We are all part of this amazing ecosystem that is thriving right now, not just surviving like so many of the other hospitality industries. And so I think we've got a tremendous opportunity in front of us, and I think we're going to rally around this mission today during this presentation. So let's look at some stats real quick. You know, what is business like? How's it shaping up today? And there we go. 56 million households have camped in 2021. 56 million. That's pretty impressive. You know, if we think about it, just going back to the spring of 2020, us, just like the RV industry, we really struggled when we had business lockdowns. There was reluctance to travel. But really, by mid-June of 2020, what we've seen since then has been nothing short of remarkable. The floodgates have been open, and campers are coming in droves to our facilities, and they're coming in RVs, and that's really exciting. A 16% increase is what we're looking at for a number of households that have camped year to date over last year. Really, really strong figures. But I think another key figure that we look at as we kind of peruse our data is the number of new campers that are coming. Over the last 2 years, you can see the stat here, 14 million new camping households have come to the industry of outdoor hospitality. And you know, I think it's really remarkable when we kind of take a look at the splits of what these campers are, who they are, right? And so let's talk about that for a minute. Number one, the biggest segment now are the millennials and the Gen Zers, right? So the face of the new camper is definitely younger. And in addition, for the first time as we look at the new camper segment, 62% are non-white. So we're seeing a lot more diversity coming into camping. One of KOA's core beliefs is that camping is fun and for everyone. And from a diversity and inclusion perspective, we put strong focus in the area. We've really looked at how we train. We've looked at how we hire. We've looked at partnerships. And really, it's super important, I think, for the vitality and the future of our respective industries. So I think these stats are really powerful and really paint the picture of who is coming. Now, the next piece is, why are they coming? And I heard that from several presenters already this morning, but it's really about connecting with the outdoors and each other. And it's consistently voted as one of the safest forms of leisure travel part of this pandemic. And so we're seeing this influx of folks that are coming in, a younger, more diverse generation. But why are they coming? They're coming because they're in RVs and they feel safe in their home on wheels. They're coming to our campgrounds because the campgrounds are just an awesome natural place to socially distance. We can't really think of anything better. And on the advocacy calls that we have been a part of over the last couple of years, that's the story we've been telling. And it certainly is true, and it's reflective in our numbers. So let's talk about what business is looking like. As 2019 was KOA's record year, best year we've ever had. And you can see in the statistics here, we've got a 14% rise in nights this year, followed by a 33% rise in registration revenues. Pretty powerful. And as we look at how it looked against 2020, you're seeing similar statistics, 16% rise in nights and 34% rise in registration revenues. So business is very, very good to say the least. And I love this graphic because it really talks about the regional results. And as you look across all of North America where we operate, you can see that on a year-over-year basis, everybody is performing better, right? That's really exciting for our mutual industries. In fact, 96% of KOAs are up on a year-over-year basis, and 93% of KOAs are up against our record year, 2019. Now, the other thing I would say is that there's really no signs of slowing down. When we look at our advanced deposits of what is the intent to camp, what does it look like as we march into 2022, it's incredibly strong. We're up 50% in advanced reservations on a year-over-year basis right now, and that's obviously on top of a phenomenal 2021. Really, really exciting. Now, I would pair that with the statistics from the RVIA. 9.6 million households intend to buy an RV in the next 5 years. I'd say we've got a pretty powerful combination of really getting that end user out to enjoy the outdoors and our campgrounds. It's awesome. So thank you for getting those rigs on the road as well. I'm going to bring us back to our mission one more time, our collective mission today, connecting people to the outdoors and each other. And I want to talk for a minute just a little bit about the industry at large and kind of what we're seeing from a trend perspective. We believe, KOA, that right now is one of the most pivotal times we have to really lay claim, grab our rightful share of the tourism and travel industry. I think for a long time, maybe outdoor hospitality hasn't been getting that recognition that maybe it deserves. But I think on the back of the numbers that you're seeing, I think now is the time. And certainly from our PR perspective, we are really pushing this message. And I think collectively for the leaders in the room, it's a message that we all should be saying, right? That we definitely have a spot. We're a formidable player in hospitality at large, and we want to have our rightful seat at that table. I think that's really important for this room. Additionally, we want to talk about the KOA brand for a minute. We resonate more with the new campers than any other organization. Can I get my slide back, please? Thanks. More than any other organization. 75% of the new campers that I said have a positive sentiment about KOA, which means that when they're getting their new rigs and they're coming onto our properties, they're going to want to return because the experience is powerful. That's a good thing. Now, with that interest, we're also seeing a lot of investment coming into the campground world. And I think that's a trend that's important for everyone to recognize because you guys are producing these units and you're like, where are we going to put them? And so that's an important conversation to have. So what we're seeing are folks in real estate investment trusts. We're seeing other commercial real estate holders that are maybe leaving like storage businesses, and they're coming to KOA. They're entering campgrounds for the strong returns that we are seeing because of this growth. In the last 2 years, we've seen resales at KOAs turn over 70 times. We've had 70 KOAs change hands, which is pretty good churn. It's about 13% of the system. But in addition, this new money that's coming in is also looking at greenfield projects. They're looking at ways to just take a piece of dirt from its core and build it into a campground. And I think that's really important for people to know in this room. But I also think it's important to recognize the challenges that come with those greenfield projects. When you look at a build out, let's say 125 site campground, it can take 2 to 5 years. By the time you look at the entitlement process, the easements, the permitting that you have to do, all these things that come together, there's a lot of obstacles in this process. But in addition to that, what I would say is that it's not necessarily a cheap proposition either. After you've purchased the land, $50,000 to $60,000 per site is the minimum you should expect to pay. Now, what does that include? It includes a main building, it includes a bathhouse, it includes your infrastructure, your RV sites, some amenities. But you can quickly add onto that price tag very, very rapidly, right? The higher level of amenities that you may want to see. So the good news is KOA has signed 13 new construction franchise agreements this year alone. The sales team's been on fire. It's nice to see this coming in. In addition, we have another backlog of 7. So we have 20 new construction campgrounds in the works today, which means more inventory. That is a good thing for the industry. Now, let's talk a little bit about the KOA campgrounds itself. So we talked some quantity statistics with new construction coming in, but now let's also talk a little bit about how the existing footprint is performing. You saw that everybody's up, but what are they doing with the money that they're making? They're reinvesting it back into their campgrounds, which is exciting. Over the last 5 years alone, we've had at least 325 KOAs make significant investment into their campgrounds. And I wanted to share just a little bit about what this kind of looks like. So 3,900 new sites are being designed right now to be implemented into inventory over the next year. If we use that 125 site average that I was talking about with those greenfield projects, that's the equivalent of adding about 31 new campgrounds to the industry. So there is tremendous amount of investment going through the KOA system by our entrepreneurs, our owners and operators. Now what I would say is, that's just a microcosm, right? We have a lot of campgrounds. We heard that statistic earlier today. There's a lot of campgrounds across North America. But we're hearing from independent park owners that it's not just KOA that's making those investments into new sites. They are as well. And we're also hearing it from associations like ARVIC, right? That there's new sites coming on board. And so as we think about the quantity of sites that we're seeing come into the market, we also have to think about the quality of sites. What is that experience that our mutual end user, our mutual customer is seeing and feeling when they get to a KOA or another facility? We believe very strongly in not resting on our laurels. We believe in challenging our franchisees to really be the best park in market. We want them to go through site grading and really look at their worst sites and make them their first. And we want them to think about adding amenities to their sites like KOA patios. And I wanted to share just a little bit of what this looks like as we move forward. Here's some examples of some campgrounds across KOA that I wanted to just give some highlights to. So here's a complete new area of a small park in Buffalo, Wyoming. Great job to the Peoples family here. But some beautiful sites, and let's dig in a little bit deeper on what that experience actually looks like. This is one of our KOA patio sites, and I think it's pretty stunning. A beautiful fire experience, great commercial furniture, a place to recreate, to spread out a little bit, plenty of room from site to site. This is what we do at KOA. This is what we're challenging our owners constantly. Here's another great example at the Natural Bridge, Lexington, KOA. Beautiful patio site. What a great place to park your rig. Another example at the Colville Walker KOA in California. And then at our Tucson Lazy Days property in Arizona, we've got to take into account our fur babies. 60% of KOA campers come with their pet. How nice is it to be able to pull up to a site in your rig like this, open the door, open the fence, and let Fido jump in on the yard? That's pretty cool. That's a really great experience. So we're continuing to innovate based on what the data is telling us to drive the experience that our mutual customer is feeling. But we're not going to stop there. We're also looking at dimensions. So we've been giving people wider sites to really enjoy the outdoor experience, but we're also now starting to challenge the vertical dimension. So these are what we call our sky decks. They're going to be hitting the Temecula, Vail Lake KOA in Southern California this coming year, and we're really excited to see how they're going to perform. We think they're going to be terrific. We put some good R&D in this, and we're really pleased with how this has turned out. Other components of the experience that we have to consider when we think about quality is Wi-Fi. It's really important. It's not an amenity anymore. It's a utility, right? We have water, electric, sewer, and yeah, we've got Wi-Fi now. We absolutely have to be making the investment, but this room needs to know that the investment is substantial. We've got a couple great partners that we're working with. We're seeing really good results with some broadband level speeds, which is good. We've got people working from home, right? We've got people homeschooling, and that's giving them the ability to be in their RVs and kind of travel around. Wi-Fi is more important than ever today, and it certainly is part of the experience. In addition, we need to continue to look at green initiatives. It's an interesting statistic, but half of KOA campers believe it is important for companies to use sustainability practices. We have a program called Camp Green. It has 3 pillars. This particular coming year in 22, we're really going to focus on energy savings. So just making simple changes for more efficient lighting, thinking about solar, thinking about EV. And when people make changes across the KOA system, they're going to get enrolled to win an EV charging station, which is pretty exciting. So again, a couple things here. You know, the sustainability piece for the camper, but I think also we can all appreciate the challenges we've had with staffing. But for a lot of those younger folks, especially the younger demographics, the sustainability practices are really important in how they look at an employer. So I think collectively, we should be thinking about our sustainability practices to really try to recruit better employees in that regard as well. And I would say the other area that's really important is cause marketing. And we have a great partner, a great organization in Care Camps that we're super, super proud to be a part of. Just awesome. Now, if you would, and I don't want to distract too much, but on your table, there's a box. Can everybody find their box? This is from the fine folks at Care Camps. It has some Montana caramels in it to just give you a little taste of Montana, courtesy of Jen Mercer. But in it, you'll also see some notes about Care Camps itself and a form if you're interested in making a donation. When you think about campers, they want to be tied to a cause. They enjoy being part of something, and so do your employees. And Care Camps just happens to be a really great vehicle for this industry for us to think about. I'll bring us back to our mission here one more time. Connecting people to the outdoors and each other. We're really thinking about this collectively, that it's all of our jobs to do this. And what I want to introduce you to is Campground of the Future. I mentioned before that we don't rest on our laurels. We're always challenging ourselves to be better. We know that quality time outside really brings people together, and we want to try to drive that from a core belief perspective as much as we possibly can. I'd invite you to visit campthefuture.com, campthefuture.com, to kind of take a look at all the things that KOA is doing as it relates to how we're trying to modify our campgrounds. One area in particular that I think we all can appreciate and touch base on is EV. We know it's coming. I would say it's not even the future, it's here, right? And so as we think about the infrastructure that we have on campgrounds, the good news is KOAs have 50 amp service. That's a wonderful thing. But it's also thinking about the wiring that it takes and how do we make sure that we can service the car the EV that's pulling a trailer, or like the example of this Ford Lightning, or how do we take a look at the EV RV when it hits the market that's pulling another EV car? How does all this kind of play out over time? And we have to be pretty strategic. So at KOA, we're really focused on being EV ready for our franchisees. So we want to know who these people are. If they're coming in and they're not in an RV, we want to have charging stations available for them at our camp stores, right? If they happen to be coming in an RV, we want to give them a vehicle for them to be able to plug into. We've partnered with Jamestown this year, and we're really proud of this partnership. They've developed a dual plug pedestal that we think is going to be really impactful. So when those rigs are coming in and they're towing, not only can they plug their RV in, but they're going to be able to plug their EV in as well. And so that's just one of the ways that we're really leading the charge as it relates to this. I think it's an area, though, as both industries, we really need to focus our attention on. So as I close today, KOA family is one of our core differentiators. I believe that 100%. The KOA family is strong, right? When you get to a KOA convention, you've never seen a sea of yellow until you come to one of those things. But it really is about sharing those collective ideas. It's really about best practicing, and the KOA family means something to all of our system. I would also say that you guys are part of the KOA family, right? It's part of that ecosystem that really makes this whole thing work, and we have to continue to work together. Toby sits on the RVIA board, and she's part of the campground task force. right? As we think about ways that we can continue to work together, we got to work on sharing data. I think it's super important. We got to continue to address the quality and the quantity of sites, as I kind of mentioned through the presentation today. We need to work together to influence the travel and tourism industry. That's for our collective best interest. There's no doubt about that. And finally, we need to continue to partner on advocacy efforts. All right, we don't, as Peter mentioned, there's more, I guess, letters in the Greek alphabet, right? COVID's here. We hope that certainly something doesn't change in that regard, but we need to continue to be prepared to make sure that we are included as critical infrastructure when they think of outdoor hospitality and the RV industry. I think that's super important. So, I'm closing. Thank you so much for the time this morning. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all the work that you do to help us advance the business and experience of outdoor hospitality. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Darren. It's always a benefit for us to hear what the campground side of our industry is doing and what our consumers are thinking, and we appreciate KOA's participation. By the way, we've noticed a number of people taking photos of the slides, which you're welcome to do, but I also want you to know the event is being live streamed on, you can reach it on RV Business website. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a tab that connects you to our YouTube channel. We will leave that up there. I don't know where Rick is, but we will leave that up there through Tuesday, maybe, Rick. Is that okay? We'll leave it up there through Tuesday. So if you want to go back and watch or pull out some information, it'll be there. You can get to the site through our website. So as we prepare for the last part of the event, I'd like to have Mike and Bob and Pete start making their way to the stage, if they would, along with our moderators, Sherm and Bob. I would also like to remind you one more time of more with Marisi when we're done with the event today. So we end our Power Breakfast 2021 with a panel discussion. Our moderators are, as I said before, Sherm Goldenberg, publisher of RV Business Magazine, and Bob Parrish, Vice President for Global Accounts for Wells Fargo Wholesale Finance and a past chairman of RVIA. Our panel today is a group of industry leaders representing the 3 largest RV manufacturers in North America. Please join me in welcoming Chairman, President, and CEO of Winnebago Industries, Mike Happy. President and CEO of Forest River, Pete Legal. And President and CEO of Thor Industries, Bob Martin. We are taking a second during the event to shoot a photograph of our great crowd in the background of these 3 industry leaders. So bear with us. Hopefully for the cover of the issue of RV Business. You know, Peter, everybody's staring at you. Not legal. I'm talking about Peter the photographer. Sherm and Bob, take it away.
Is this live?
It was live.
Is it? It's live? So, Bob Parrish and I are co-moderating, and we're not prepared. That's an apology. But we haven't had a live run-through or anything. We're just freelancing here. Holy shit. All right.
Sorry.
We call this the Big Three interview, and for obvious reasons. Considering that these gentlemen are CEOs of the three highest volume RV manufacturers in North America, and it's great to see you guys in person. It's unbelievable to see everybody here in person. It's a moment. And so, Bob, you ready for me to start up?
Kick it off.
All right. We're going to have to read since we're all prepared. So we're going to try and pick the brains of these three gentlemen. So let's start with an open-ended question regarding what is clearly one of the zaniest years on record, a year in which we've all faced extraordinary challenges and yet reaped, in many cases, impressive gains. Bob, it's your turn.
Yes, we were reminded last week by RVIA that October shipments hit a historic high, 57,971 units. Phenomenal. This week, they mentioned we're going to close 21 at over 600,000, and likely that 600,000 will take us through 2022. I mean, how do you explain that in the face of all the craziness and all the variables we've been dealing with this past year? And that's our first question to the group.
Well, anyway, that 57,000 last month should have been 60,000. I guess that's the way I'd respond to that, you know.
Well, first thing, Pete, congratulations on the Titan Award. Very well deserved. And second, I knew I was short, but that picture just validated how short I was. So can't wait to see that on the cover.
It will show how bald I am.
Yeah. I mean, listen, Bob and Sherm, it's been obviously a crazy past 20 months, and we've had a lot of great speakers today, and certainly one of the messages has been resiliency, and I think candidly we've been the beneficiary of priorities in people's lives changing. They certainly, as Peter talked about, have a little bit more money at their disposal, but they're reprioritizing their time. And I think our industry and most outdoor industries are in a great position to capitalize on that. So will we see more months of 55,000, 60,000 shipments in the future? I believe so because I think retail is going to stay healthy going forward.
And for me, just ditto much of the same. Once again, congrats to Pete. Well deserved. Definitely the titan of the industry. And agree with Mike. We have a great opportunity. It's been a crazy year dealing with shortages, semiconductors, you name it. I mean, every week it feels like it's something new, but it's truly to all the people in this room that work hard every day to get the product out. It surprises us every month just to see that we're able to ship the amount that the industry is with all the issues that we face. So we see, brighter days ahead. We see higher retail. It's been great to see the numbers today from our economists and KOA. And we agree with all that. We think that we have great tailwinds, and being part of that outdoor space, people just want to get outdoors, and they want to travel. And, traveling, through hotels and airplanes, going overseas, it's very hard right now. And an RV travel simply makes it much, much easier. So.
Is this working? Yeah, it's working. As senior management of significant corporations, what then would you consider your biggest takeaways from this last 19, 20 months that there were no precedents? This is go by the numbers. Is it resiliency, as Mike was mentioning? Is that the number one takeaway as senior management?
Well, I guess probably, but it has taught us how to deal with the unexpected. It's not just a shortage on lumber or paneling, it's shortages on everything. Staples, breakers, things that we never experienced in the past. And so it's a whole new ball game, at least for us at Forest River, and I'm sure it's the same for everybody here, is that we were never trained on how to expect a new shortage on top of the virus, where people are off sick and we have to close a plant, and just to be safe. And so it's a new learning experience. And I think we have it down pretty well pat today. And I think we're going to see more of the same problems in the near future. When I say near future, I mean 6 to 8 months probably. And so we're prepared for that. But we have to do what we have to do to be safe, to make sure that the people who are sick aren't infecting other people. And at the same token, finding a new way to get staples when our staple supplier doesn't deliver, So we go to the big box stores and raid them, And just items like that. And so, it trained us how to overcome some obstacles. I think we're pretty well trained today, and I think it's going to continue for a while.
Sherman, I think the other word that comes to mind for me is it accelerated a lot of things we already were working on, that have become even more important. Pete mentioned their employee wellness physically and mentally. We talk a lot more about first-time buyers today because of the percentage of those buyers increasing as, the percentage of sales. And then, what Kurt talked about with RVTI, us working together as an industry to increase the service capacity and quality, for those customers to stay in the lifestyle. So I think it's just poured fuel on the fire as an industry for us to make sure that we're moving forward on a lot of different issues.
And just for me, I agree with everything both have said. Mike and I, we get to deal with the investment community, which is always fun, and they always want forecasts. They want to know 3-5 years out, and we found it's very hard to do in this environment. And I simply tell everybody that we're not the best at forecasting, especially now, but we're great at reacting. And it's all the hard work that our teams do. When you have thousands of units in a yard that, you don't want to stop the line, you continue to build and you've got to catch them up at the end of the month. And it creates huge disruptions, but as Pete said, our teams have learned to do things that we never thought we had to do. And so I think it's just been commendable for the entire industry to get these numbers out that we're able to do with all of the challenges.
Yeah. So since we're kind of swimming around supply chain and inventories, I'm going to jump over a little bit and ask about inventory levels. We've done more business than ever. Dealers are operating at really historic lows. Some dealers might say hysteric lows of inventory levels. Where do you see it now? And where do you see it? How does that play out in 2022, I guess?
I guess obviously the inventory levels are low, but in the next few months, we anticipate that the dealer inventories will be coming up somewhat, but not to the levels it was before the pandemic. And at the same time, we have to be better at getting units done, shipped to the dealer so he can deliver them. But I think that this coming year, by 6 months from now, the dealer inventories are going to be more reasonable than what they are today. But today they aren't quite as bad as what they were 2-3 months ago. But it's going to take a while to get back to normality.
Yeah, I agree with Pete in the sense that inventories are on their way, to being in a better position. But as the dealers certainly know in this room, it's been a long climb. I think if we're candid, in February of 2020, there were probably some businesses around, the industry that maybe weren't in the greatest shape. Some maybe had too much inventory or, weren't operating at maybe the most efficient level. And I think COVID provided a reset for many companies, ours included, to really reevaluate how we want to do business. And we've certainly talked about the resiliency associated with that. So, I do think inventories obviously are going to continue to heal. But I think many of us in the room are probably thinking about reestablishing what a new normal looks like in our businesses in terms of profitability and working capital and just overall business processes. I'm not sure all of us just want to revert back to what we were doing in 2019. I think there's an opportunity for actually all sectors of the industry to maybe redefine a new normal and operate together at an even higher, more efficient level.
Yeah, I mean, obviously inventories have been too low. I think we're all starting to see a little bit of a build more on travel trailers. Motorhomes are still an issue, as everyone knows, and it's linked to semiconductor and getting chassis from Mercedes, Fiat, Ford, you name it. It's been challenging. So I think motorhome inventories are going to linger down longer, just as that replenishment cycle. And we look at inventories now; it's going to take quite a while to build those up. And for us, one of my barometers of the overall industry, people always wonder, going into a recession, what do you see first? And for me, it's usually Airstream. It's a $100,000 trailer or more that really, people don't need. It's a want. It's a cult item, and that's one of our products that there's virtually no inventory still out there, and it's going to take a long time just to get inventory. And there are a lot of retail orders still in the system. So I think overall, we'll see a build, and we'll probably see some sort of a new normal. As Mike said, do we want to get back to where we were in, at 18, 19? Probably not. And it's healthier to have fresh inventory that's turning quicker for everybody in the room.
Mike, here again, you mentioned something that seemed real relevant regarding not just going back to where everyone was before, but reset, coming hopefully out of the pandemic. And one of the topics we hear pretty regular right now is repair event cycle time. It seems it had plenty of credibility and momentum going into the pandemic. This is helping people, travelers, RV owners on the road, get their units fixed, get them turned around. It involves all levels of the industry, suppliers, et cetera. It's the buzzword of the moment once again. Do you agree?
Well, I certainly, it's tough not to agree that we can do a better job in taking care of our customers after the sale. I think everybody in the room has heard enough stories of experiences that weren't as positive, as we would like many customers to have. I remember here recently, and Bob and Pete were both in this meeting, but one of Mike Piro's colleagues on the RVDA board told a story about how they've developed a shakedown kit at their dealership because they know things are going to go wrong, in those first couple of trips. And they're just handing the customer essentially a MacGyver kit that says, hey, here's your Gorilla Glue and your duct tape. And I really reflected on that after that meeting and said, wow, we've got to get rid of the shakedown kits. And we have to do a better job at an OEM level, working with our suppliers to make sure that the product is high quality coming out of the plants. But then we've got to partner together with our dealers and our other distribution stakeholders to make sure that we are getting parts to the dealers in a more efficient manner, and they have the other skills that it takes to fix that problem quickly. So we're obviously, I think, with Pete and Bob, I mean, we're complete supporters of the RECT initiative, and but I think in order to change to something different in the future, we've all got to actually tangibly change some of the things we're doing, or we're not going to get there. If we just hope we're going to get there, it's not going to happen.
You were going to say something, Bob?
No, I agree. We were all part of a meeting where we've thrown our support behind the repair event cycle time. I mean, we know that's an issue. This year, it's probably been heightened even more because of random part shortages. And I think the vendors are trying to feed the manufacturers first to keep production going, and it's probably hurt the retail customer a little bit more. So as things balance out, it is definitely a goal. Mike and I sit on the RVIA board, and it's something we definitely need to get there. I think this COVID and everything has made it just a little bit more of a challenge, but I think as an industry we can all do a better job, and it is a goal that I think we can hit over time.
I'd like to add to that, specifically at Forest River, when we look at what is the problem, what is causing the unit not to get fixed and back on the road, and a lot of it is the parts. And why do we have a parts problem? Well, at Forest River, we're changing our parts numbering system so as to use one number that people can understand and communicate. We're going to use the manufacturer's number for our number instead of assigning a number from each and every one of our divisions. So it's pretty simple. When a dealer needs, say, a motor for a slide out, that number's right on that motor. He doesn't have to go through a whole exercise taking our number that is, maybe we got 6 or 8 different numbers for that same part at our various different divisions. And I think that's a huge step forward. We're going to have that done before the end of this year. We've been working on it, trying it, and measuring several times before we cut, so we know what we're doing. And I think it's going to be a big aid to the dealer to be able to communicate with our people specifically on that unit now, instead of having to jump through hoops in deciphering our number that Salem might have, Wildwood, Cedar Creek, etc. And all those numbers were different. Now we're going to go to a number that's on that part so we communicate among ourselves and be able to get that part to that dealer a lot quicker. And that's been a pretty good job there at Forest River, but we'll have that done by the end of this month, before Christmas.
Excellent. Following up on that industry-wide trends theory, a lot of talk about electric vehicles, cars, electric trucks. We saw KOA talking about charging ports today in their campgrounds. Where does that hit us in a practical sense, though, from a manufacturing perspective? Is it that close, or do we have further challenges to face?
Obviously, I think we got a lot of challenges there. Just if everybody's going to go electric, do we have the natural resources to make the batteries to be able to do that? You know, I don't know. But at the same time, at Forest River, we are and have developed an electric bus, which I think is going to be the forerunner of an electric RV. But again, the batteries are so big and so heavy, we have to find a better way to build a battery to make it efficient. But I'm sure that's going to come. And the electric vehicle is here to stay, and we got to, as a manufacturer, get with a program and make that happen to sell more RVs.
Yeah, Bob, I mean, I think if we sit at this breakfast 10 years from now, we're going to see a lot of our catalogs have a pretty significant form of electrification, motorized towables, and even the vehicles that tow, our products as well, obviously. So I think pace, is going to be determined by, some of the things Pete talked about in terms of availability of raw materials. I think the costs, the functionality, the infrastructure, and not just at campgrounds, but dealers, as well, having to think about their service infrastructure, and how to take care of customers when they come in with these. But I think it's a matter of when and not if. And I'm sure all three of our companies are, along with others, are actively, thinking about and working on this as we speak. And but it's coming. It's inevitable.
It's coming in a big way, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, as you watch the auto companies, I mean, they're investing billions, so they're all in. It's probably going to hit Europe a little earlier, and that's where we have European manufacturing. And when we bought the Erwinheimer Group, they were already working on this technology. So it's been interesting for our groups to work with them. You can go back to July 25th. There's an article that was written about a deadlifts trailer being towed by an Audi e-tron over the Alps. And the trailer had regenerating axles that actually gave the e-tron 40 more miles. So I think this is some things we all need to work on. It's not just the tow vehicle or the pulling vehicle, but it's also the trailer.
In an effort to get to the home stretch here, I guess I'll end, if it's okay with you, Bob.
By all means.
One kind of an open-ended question about those 600,000 potential shipments this year by the end and in 2022. This being the last question, how realistic is that? Do you think we can do this? I know somebody touched on it earlier, but can we do this?
We're doing basically that today, but obviously it depends on the amount of manufacturing space we have, and can we hire the people to build the RVs? And will that continue? Now, a year from now, when this pandemic is hopefully over, how is that going to affect the RV industry? I think that's a big question there.
As far as demand?
What's that?
As far as demand,
yes,
too?
And so I think next year is going to be another good year like this year, but going 3-4 years from now, I have not the strongest feelings one way or the other.
Okay. That was nice and safe.
As I said, we can react. It's hard to predict. But I think the 600 is attainable. We've got the infrastructure to do it. For us, as we move forward, I think everyone up here has announced, plan expansions, some in other areas where we can find, some labor where Elkhart's gotten pretty tight. But I think we watched COVID bring this new, young set, ethnically diverse set of buyers to our industry that we've been trying to pull in for years. And part of it, we've had to give them a great experience and hold them in. And we've got a great story within the industry that most people, once they start, they don't just give it up. They trade every 3 to 5 years. They trade into from a small unit to sometimes all the way up to a Class A diesel, and that's our goal as an industry. And so if we can continue with the experience, and it's from sales, service, campgrounds, and the different ways that you're using it. So I think if we can continue, doing the things that we've done great, and also look to the things of the future, we've got a bright future for many, many years. But I do agree with Pete. I mean, a couple of years out, it's just hard to predict. But we are planning for growth, and more people to stay in the industry than leave it. So.
No, the only thing I'll just add is, our teams are talking about how to stay disciplined and responsible as we grow, right? And obviously COVID taught us that almost anything can happen on very short notice, and so I think we all have aspirations to grow the industry. We probably all have aspirations to grow our share. But I know our team talks a lot about how do we continue to do it in a responsible and disciplined way, and play the long game, as much as the short game as well. We want to sell peanuts when the circus is in town, but we also want to make sure that that we just continue to have a steadily healthy upward climb as well. So that's what we'll be talking a lot about within our brands.
Before I sign off, Pete, you were going to add something? No. I didn't. I figured as much, but I had it. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Seriously. And go ahead. I'll just stay.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I'll just stay here.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Mike and Bob and Pete, for sharing with us important things about our future and about your companies. Thank you, audience, for being with us and blessing us with your presence at a wonderful event that is fun for everybody, I think. Record crowd, which we appreciate. I would encourage you as you depart to go slowly. There might be a traffic issue as you exit, and a worse traffic issue would be an accident that blocked others from leaving. So I encourage you to be safe, take your time, have a great holiday season. May God bless. Travel safe. Oh, and stick around for more from Maurici if you want, please.
Is this on? I don't think. Excuse me, for those of you sticking around for more with Maurice, we'll be starting here in just a few seconds. So if you would, please just come toward the front, and we'll start taking questions momentarily.
For those of you interested in sitting with Peter a few minutes, please come towards the stage if you can. I don't want to disrupt the social time, but I do want, for purposes of time efficiency, for you to come up. Just hold patient, Peter.
got a question? Greg. I don't think this is working out.
We'll see. Who's interested in talking to Pete Morisi? Come on over here if you are, please. I don't
Hello.
know. Hey, Doug, are you going to listen? Come on over. There we go. Come on, grab a seat or something, guys. Yeah.
Thank you. Who's got a question? Am I live?
I'll give you the mic.
Gas prices and high inflation impact on industry.
I know.
Any comment on it?
We have a floating microphone.
There we go. Now we're getting some action. Let's get started.
Let me borrow that.
Hello. I was just asked about gas prices. I think the thing to remember is that we are not in an equilibrium. That we can see gas prices sink, 20% by February and then bounce back. But I think what you'll see is the cycle will be elevated simply because there'll be fewer sources of supply. And much as manufacturers have become more disciplined about pricing and margins, say the airline industry, consider how they've become more disciplined. OPEC has become more disciplined. What's more, oil is not being priced right now strictly for the purposes of earning income or earning profits. The Biden administration decided to take a tough line with Saudi Arabia regarding strategic issues in the Gulf and with regard to the reporter, the American national, who was murdered in Turkey, likely at the prince's behest. So, okay, he took a tough line. So the way the prince is responding is to cozy up to Russia and China and not respond to what concerns we might have. The other thing is the prince is not as worried about oil going away as, say, a wildcatter in Texas, because the prince has something else up his sleeve: sunshine and the ability to produce hydrogen. He does not see himself as a threatened state. So with this in mind, oil is not being priced strictly on the basis of how do I maximize my revenue over the next 10 years, because no matter how it goes, he's going to do all right. And the Russians want to use this right now to try to reassert themselves. I could go down a long path on that, but the basic thing you need to remember is the Russians have power when the price of gas is up, and they don't have very much power when it's down. They have more geopolitical power in Europe than they do military power, and as a consequence, it fits into their game plan. So if you've got Russia and Saudi Arabia thinking the same, you've got OPEC and OPEC Plus elevating gas prices. What its consequences for you? The other thing to remember is we have learned that gasoline prices don't drive leisure travel because it's such a small percentage of the cost. What's more, what competes with leisure travel in an RV? And that's leisure travel in an airplane. So my feeling is that the people that have to worry more are the people, frankly, running the campgrounds, because they've been raising their prices a lot since even before the pandemic because there are not enough sites. They may feel more pressure when it comes to the kinds of prices they're charging for what is a fixed asset than you will see in terms of the demand for RVs. So I think that if you're just smart about your product mix, about keeping an eye on efficiency in the vehicle and so forth, and smart about amenities to permit people to work away from home in the RV, access to internet infrastructure, your networking, things of that nature, you'll be okay. You got another question? Yeah, then you. Never. The PPI and the CPI are gathered by the same people, but it doesn't flow through very well. And they really are kind of based on different principles. I mean, if wholesale prices are going up, it creates pressure on retailers. There's no two ways about it. But I think the most important thing to look at in inflation abating is what's the most significant phenomenon with inflation. Prices are up 6%, wages aren't. Where's the money going? Into OPEC's pockets and into profit margins. People like General Motors just reported really good profits. They did some workarounds on chips, but they didn't do any discounting. That's where you're going to see the margins are going to start to narrow and the discounting is going to come back. You had a question. No. No, I don't think that the Fed feels compelled to manipulate the rate of interest to facilitate debt financing. What's keeping interest rates down is globally, even prior to the pandemic, there was an excess supply of savings. And if you're an Argentine school teacher with some equivalent of an IRA, would you rather, and you have a fixed pension in Argentine pesos, whatever, I think they have pesos. It's Brazil that's got the real, yeah. You've got a fixed income pension from your school district or your state or whatever, and you have some of your own money. Where do you want to invest your own money? Do you want to invest it in their currency or ours? Right. One of the things we observed in the first decade of this century, when Bernanke tried to raise interest rates, he raised the short rate, but the long end of the yield curve did not rise. And people go, whoa, that means something. No, that only means something if markets are driving it. What's suppressing the long end of the yield curve is the demand for U.S. bonds and U.S. assets as an inflation hedge abroad. Whatever inflation is going to happen here, it will be worse in Latin America. And it's going to be worse in Asia, less China. So people are going to want to hedge to be here. The other thing is a lot of the dollars that are going to China seem to be disappearing. We don't know where they're going. I know where they are. They're right under your feet. I mean, after all, look at the way this stinker is just evaporating private property by waking up one morning and saying Alibaba is an enemy of the state. I mean, he's like Mussolini. So the way to hedge your bets is the way the Saudis have been hedging their bets, by buying property in New York. Well, there's a lot of different ways of doing that. And so a lot of that money is coming here, and that suppresses interest rates. Yeah. The bond buy, I'm sorry, you mean that? No, the Fed has been purchasing 120, before the pandemic, during the pandemic, they said initially, we're going to purchase $120 billion a month to add liquidity to the system. They ended up purchasing much more than that to finance the Trump and then the Biden stimulus packages, the $5 trillion. Now they're tapering purchases. That's nice, but they're still putting liquidity into the system by still purchasing. What they need to do, and I have a column coming out on Wednesday in the Washington Times, is not only do they have to taper, they have to end, and they have to start sucking liquidity out of the system by selling off their balance sheet, which Bernanke tried to do, but not wait for a big recovery to do that, to do it now. Now, that may hurt the recovery. It's still good for you. Inflation is a really corrosive thing. You know, it's kind of like taking an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety drug. It makes you feel good, and then you become addicted to it. And then you have to take more of it and more of it. Go back and look at the record of the Fed in the 1970s. The Fed was saying the very same kinds of things that Powell was saying. It's transitory. People who staffed there are now my age, and they've written articles about this and documented it. The inflation didn't go like this. It went up, and then they got some religion like Powell just got, and they tightened a little bit, and then they started worrying about Nixon getting reelected, and then they pushed it up some more, and so forth. If you want to know if there's really a prospect of bringing inflation under control, remember this. Powell's not even an attorney anymore. He's not even a banker anymore. He's a shrewd Washington operator. Before he became chairman, he got himself the assignment of picking the regional bank presidents. They owe him their jobs. And in Washington, that's the currency. Who do you depend on for your employment? Because if you think people can get fired quickly in this room, no one can be fired quicker than someone that isn't elected in Washington, that has any kind of power. Watch how he operates when Congress flips. Is he effective at cultivating people when Congress flips? Because if he is, then he'll have freedom to maneuver, and the people he'll have freedom to maneuver with will tend to be more fiscally and monetarily conservative. Not that they'll be conservatives, but they'll be more in favor of curbing inflation. Then he will lose his allegiance to Biden. Also, keep a close watch on Kamala's popularity, because Kamala was a terribly unpopular woman before Biden picked her. Remember, she couldn't even make the cut for the debates. In South Carolina, she barely registered in the polls, even though it has a very heavy black population. And the reason is the two bookends, Cory Booker and Kamala, are prosecutors, and prosecutors tend to have personalities like mine. And that is, we're really entertaining to listen to, and we really can get at the truth, and nobody really wants to have them as a boss. Okay? They're not electable. If Kamala continues to be in the pale, who are the Democrats going to run? It's not polite to run against Biden in the primaries. So it's either going to be Biden, or it's going to be Biden ducking out at the end going, I'm getting too old. It's time for Kamala. If Kamala's in the pale and the Republicans really do well in the midterms, then it'll pay for Powell to cultivate the Republicans. He's the Talleyrand of our times. I mean, you don't need a weather vane. You just need Mr. Powell. So look at how those things go, that political mix, and you'll see whether we have some prospect of curbing inflation. But the thing is, from the point of view of doing business, it takes 12 months to 18 months for anything the monetary authorities do to impact inflation in a fundamentally structural and meaningful way. They caused a recession, but it takes time to squeeze it from the system. There was a good article yesterday or today in the Wall Street Journal about bicycle manufacturers. They've got it in their head that they can raise the price of a bike $1,000 a year. And they're going to do that until somebody breaks them of the habit. Okay? So it takes time. So from the point of view of doing business, you need to assume that inflation is with you and to act accordingly, because any kind of progress on this now is a couple of years out. If transitory means 2 years plus, perhaps 3 to 5, and maybe indefinitely, then I guess Powell's right. Otherwise, why, he's wrong. I mean, this is just not transitory. You're now in an inflationary state, just like you're in a COVID state. Another question? Yeah. Well, if you look at the American Heritage Dictionary and you look in the Webster's Dictionary,
it really has two different definitions. It's not a word that's well defined, but I think it's fair to say it means something other than until we break the habit. And I think we are now in that inflationary habit. The Conference Board's latest one-year inflation expectation is 8%. It's a survey of consumers and businesses. I think that the only place where you find low inflation expectations is if you look at the bond market. And the reason is the bond market is hoping and praying that Powell is right. And also the bond market is very heavily influenced by the pressures I described. I mean, no, if you put your money in long-term treasuries, you're going to lose a couple of percentage points a year. If you keep them in Argentinian peso-based bonds, government bonds, you could lose it all in 6 months because we just don't know what's going to go on down there. You had a question?
Will our national debt influence interest rates?
Not immediately, no. It's, I don't like the national debt. What I really don't like is adding to the debt. Because the capacity of the world to hold U.S. bonds on their books is pretty significant. Even as the U.S. economy has become a smaller share of trade, the dollar as the currency of commerce has dramatically expanded. And when I say that, if you consider there is trade between Chile and, say, Thailand, okay? But there is no market for Chilean pesos into Thai bahts. All the transactions to clear that trade go through the dollar. You go pesos to dollars, dollars to bahts. And anybody who has the capacity to hedge just does business in dollars and only converts back to bahts or pesos as they need to. So the dollar just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The way to think of the dollar is the way to think about Microsoft Windows. It is very, very hard not to use Microsoft Windows. So everybody is on it. And likewise, the dollar has become this sort of common denominator. And the other thing, well, I've got you on this. The Bitcoin is not money. It's not going to become money. I'm not going to play shortstop for the New York Yankees next year. Okay? Okay? And the election wasn't stolen. Okay? Those are basic truths. All right? The Bitcoin is basically a monopoly game where people use real cash, and it has value as long as people continue to want to play that game. But if they decide one morning they don't want to play that game anymore, there's no Bitland. What stands behind the dollar is the U.S. economy and the willingness of the people to use the dollar as a means of international transactions. What stands behind the Bitcoin is people having fun, including Elon Musk. One of the things to remember is that most people have siloed knowledge. And that is they know a great deal about a few things and not much about anything else. But if they are very, very successful and get very rich with the few things they know about, then people start to think they know about everything. For example, Jane Fonda expounding on foreign policy and things like that. Don't believe Elon when it comes to money, all right? Or me when it comes to constitutional law. Another question? Yeah. And then you.
Pretend you're in a make-believe world and you're President of the United States. What would you do about China?
I would disengage with China as much as I could, and I would do that through a tariff that balanced our trade with China over 5 years. I've written about that. I would require an import license for every dollar that's imported from China, and the way I would generate those licenses is by giving them to our exporters for every dollar they send to China. That would compel a balanced trade. I'd have to phase that in, so I'd give you $1.50 license for every dollar, to start, and I'd phase it down over 5 years. The other thing we need to do is we need to understand that China is a menacing fascist state. It does everything the Germans did in the 1930s. It has concentration camps, it curbs free speech, and it has the advantage of a very powerful collection network to monitor what people think and say. The most important element of fascism is the control of thought and speech. And you can find that 2 places right now in the world, President Xi's office, and AOC's world, Pan American Universities. Fascism is the ultimate threat because these are times when most people are managing their lives in difficult circumstances. They're not in the RV industry. They're losing to inflation. They've lived through a period of slow growth. An historian from Columbia, who would be 100 or 105 now if he was alive, told me when I was a young man, Peter, fascism is about managing the loss. And generally, authoritarian leaders tap into discontent with the gradual erosion of middle-class circumstances. And that's what Xi is afraid of, and that's what some of our leaders on the left right now are afraid of. And by the way, our leaders on the right would play that game if they had the chance. In light of that, given his blue water navy, he's a terrible threat. You can't really run an economy like that forever. And so, generally speaking, when people feel most threatened in circumstances like his, some sort of hot war emerges. He's certainly playing with it. I mean, we're one mistake away in the straits of going to war, okay? So now, with all that as background, again, on trade, what I said, the other thing is I would try to isolate China by cutting them out of our payment systems, and I would be restructuring our Navy. The two things to remember about our Navy is it looks like the Spanish Armada just before the English kicked their tails. Those big aircraft carriers are useless if we get it into a close-in China Sea shootout, because the Chinese missiles can take them out. We need a small, agile fleet. The people at the undersecretary level, assistant secretary level, had this worked out during the Obama years, and they were advocating that, and they were passed over for this administration because they're considered too hawkish. We have a Secretary of Defense right now who's a very good paper pusher. His answer to China is to basically build a few airstrips in Australia. What we need to do is reconfigure the fleet and invest in it. And the other problem with the fleet, not only do they have the wrong boats, it's more woke than ready. The American Navy is decaying from within. Its officer corps is incapable. They can't function without GPS. The Chinese can take that out. A good naval officer is able to operate in the blind and still be able to succeed. We don't have that anymore. The Navy needs to be fixed. The Navy needs to be fixed much more than the trade deficit needs to be fixed. I'd cut them out of the payment system as well. One of the problems that we have is we're basically churning out dollars, which are the coin of the realm. They're accumulating them and they're getting to use them to buy influence. We have to stop the trade deficit. We have to stop depending on them so much. And we have to configure the Navy so that it can deal with the threat, the real prospect. We could be at war within the next 5 years. And if you think I'm sort of right-wing zealot, a lot of our retired military leaders are saying the very same things. And what I just said about the Navy being too woke came from a retired admiral. And our Navy captains will tell you they're so heavily tracked right now out of the Pentagon, no matter where they are in the world, that they never get to take any initiative. So they never learn to do battle in the blind. Wars are won by officers with objectives, not detailed instructions. Now, the good thing about that is I can't imagine that the Chinese officers have any autonomy whatsoever. Now, someone else had a question. Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about supply and demand in the sense that we keep getting told that demand is so high on everything right now, but is it really demand that's so high or is it supply that's so low? For example, in the automotive industry, demand is really high supposedly, but you only have 15 million units being sold a year.
Yeah.
It's not like you're at 17 and demand's 20. Is demand really just the normal 17 and supply is being constrained? And how does that reflect everything?
This is going to be a real short answer. If demand were normal, we'd still have a supply problem, so we'd still have some inflation. If supply were normal, okay, we'd still have a demand problem and we'd still have some inflation. I mean, demand is beyond what the economy can produce, and supply is below what it should be able to produce, and it can't adjust because of some of the social payments we're making, which are encouraging people not to work. You can't be sending people checks, and the people who make $35,000 a year, $40,000 a year, you can't be sending them checks in the mail
for children and not have them just stay home with kids? Because they don't get enough out of working. Another question? Okay, is that it? Well, listen, thanks very much for staying and having me. I really enjoy these visits very, very much, and I hope I see you again.
Thanks, Peter. Thank you. That's your element.